Well, it's time now to take a look at news stories making headlines around the globe. Well, President Bola Ahmed Tinubu has approved the constitution of Nigeria's team to the U.S.-Nigeria Joint Working Group as part of efforts to deepen collaboration in tackling security challenges in Nigeria. National Security Advisor Nuhu Ribadu will lead the Nigerian side of the Joint Working Group, supported by a multi-stakeholder team drawn from key security and policy institutions. The development follows the recent high-level engagements in Washington, D.C., led by the National Security Advisor. Those joining Ribadu in the working group include the Minister of Foreign Affairs, Yusuf Tuga, Minister of Defense, Abubakar Badaru, and Minister of Interior, Olubunmi Tunji-Ojo. Others are Minister of Humanitarian Affairs, Bernard Doro, Chief of Defense Staff, General Olufemi Oluyede, Director General of the National Intelligence Agency, Ambassador Mohammed, and Inspector General of Police, Kayode Egbetokun, Idiat Hassan of the Office of the National Security Advisor, and Paul Alabi of the Embassy of Nigeria in the U.S. will coordinate the Secretariat. Tinubu urged the team to work closely with their U.S. counterparts to ensure the seamless implementation of all agreed areas of cooperation. Meanwhile, there is a fresh security concern in Abuja's border communities as 7 visiting youths were abducted during the night raid in Gindan-Bijimi, a remote settlement under Buari Area Council of the Federal Capital Territory. Residents say victims had traveled to the area to attend a relative's burial when armed men struck. The incident adds to a worrying pattern of attacks targeting vulnerable border communities, linking the Federal Capital Territory with neighboring states. The difficult journey to Gindan-Bijimi highlights the severe security and infrastructural challenges facing both residents and law enforcement agents. The 4-hour dusty drive by Arise News from Buari Roundabout revealed increased deployment, with security operatives positioned at strategic points and several ambush locations along the route. This is a worrying development. Well, in another development, security and the push for state police dominated discussions at the National Executive Council meeting of the Association of Senior Civil Servants of Nigeria, where civil servants showed excitement after the release of 6 officials of the Ministry of Defense by kidnappers. Arise correspondent Friday Oloko filed this report.
For many outsiders, trade unionism often revolves around demands for a realistic minimum wage in the face of rising inflation, poor working conditions, and widespread unemployment. But globally, and increasingly in Nigeria, confrontational unionism is giving way to more constructive engagement. At a National Executive Council meeting in Abuja, the Association of Senior Civil Servants of Nigeria, an affiliate of the Trade Union Congress, aligned itself with that shift. The Minister of Labour and Employment, Mohammed Degenyade, urges workers to recommit to ethical and responsible union practices.
This administration will continue to prioritize social dialogue as a tool for resolving disputes and improving workplace conditions. We see ASCN as a dependable partner in this regard.
The national president of the association, Shehu Mohammed, calls on government to meet its obligations in safeguarding the lives and property of citizens.
About 6 of our members that were kidnapped on their way from Lagos to Abuja for the promotion examination. But we thank God, through our pressure and the intervention of the Minister of Defense and other security agencies, these victims were rescued and they are now reunited with their family. So we are happy about it, and we'll make sure that the federal government, the Civil Service Commission, did the needful in terms of programs like this, the promotion examination and interview whatsoever. It should be decentralized so that members can attend to such interviews and examination within their states. We had a plan of concessioning, especially that of the King's College. And even the one that was attempted last was started from the same King's College. So we have to meet with relevant authorities and inform that, yes, as it happens during the Obasanjo, we are not going to allow this thing to continue. We are not going to allow it to happen.
Representing the head of the Civil Service of the Federation, Patience Oyekunle, reaffirms the administration's commitment to ongoing reforms designed for the public good.
Despite the prevailing economic challenges, this administration remains firmly committed to promoting staff welfare.
Ensuring inclusion, ensuring that staff welfare is being taken care of in the office. We also made sure that last year, when there was the issue around fuel, we made sure that we provided a subsidy allowance.
As the NEC meeting concludes, industrial relations experts say the conversations held here will shape national debate on labor, security, and governance and help reposition Nigeria on the global stage.
Meanwhile, the House of Representatives is calling on the federal government to take more proactive steps towards establishing state police and strengthening other security measures to tackle the rising insecurity across the country. The lawmakers outlined key recommendations to overhaul the nation's security architecture, stressing that it is time for the country to address insecurity decisively and empower the state and local police to take up the challenge of securing their territories.
Amend the Constitution to allow for state and local policing under a strong national regulatory framework to prevent abuse. Pass a comprehensive national security reform bill to clarify mandates and enhance coordination and institutionalize joint operations. 3. Strengthen defense industrial development to reduce the relevance of foreign procurement. 4. Establish a border security control act
to empower the local government to develop tailored security strategy that we cannot be in Abuja and be making policy for local people. We need to decentralize this policy in order to help us. And equally need to invest in technology and intelligence. That has been said. We need to go another way. Yeah, recruitment is important, but we need to digitalize most of these things and let it get it done.
Well, in the same vein, the Inspector General of Police, Olukoyede Egbetokun, has confirmed the withdrawal of 11,566 policemen previously assigned to very important personalities. Egbetokun stated this during a meeting with senior police officers in Abuja. Arise News correspondent Ferdinand Duoha reports.
The meeting is coming against the backdrop of a spike in insecurity across the country. It is to counter this insecurity that the president has declared a nationwide security emergency, unveiling sweeping measures that include the largest police and military recruitment drive in recent years and the withdrawal of police from VIP guard duties. At this meeting, the Inspector General of Police is rallying police officers for the task ahead. Egbetokun announces the enforcement of the presidential directive while confirming that 11,566 officers attached to VIPs have been withdrawn and redeployed back into the field.
It's important to emphasize that this action is a patriotic, forward-looking, and operationally prudent measure designed to strengthen our manpower capacity for critical frontline policing functions. We wish to assure members of the public that this withdrawal will enable the force to expand deployment into areas where policing input has the most meaningful public safety outcomes.
Reacting to previous failed efforts to implement the withdrawal of police officers from VIP protection, Egbetokun says the presidential order would ensure ease of implementation.
In fact, the presidential order is a cover for us to implement this directive that we have been trying to implement all this while. So you can see that the implementation is going to be more effective this time around, because I know that nobody is going to call IG again that, please, these are my people, No governor is going to call me, no minister is going to call me. Friends, my family members will not put any pressure on me because they know it's his presidential order.
To enforce security, the IGP says the police is working on operationalizing a strong native intelligence network, reinforcing and empowering community policing structures, and building deep action-driven partnerships with sister security agencies.
Peace maintained in one location and violated in another is not peace. In the immediate, we are neither going to sleep nor give ourselves accolades until every pupil abducted from St. Mary Catholic School in Niger State is rescued unhurt and united with their families.
As the festive season approaches, the IGP is asking that it is defined by public safety, policing dominance, citizens' confidence, and crime suppression. Ferdinand Duroha, Arise News.
Well, finally, former Nigerian President Goodluck Jonathan is back in Nigeria after being caught in the military takeover in Guinea-Bissau. Jonathan arrived Abuja yesterday aboard the Republic of Cote d'Ivoire jet. He was in Guinea-Bissau as part of a joint election observer mission deployed by the African Union, ECOWAS, and the West African Elders Forum. The military takeover occurred after both incumbent President Umaru Sissoco Embalo and the opposition candidate Fernando Diaz declared themselves winners of Sunday's presidential election, though official results had not been released. Well, good news. In another development, Lagos State government says it has approved a major intervention to boost road safety and modernize the maritime transport corridor through the rollout of Governor Babajide Sanwo-Olu's 2,000 CNG truck initiative. Speaking at the meeting with the Nigeria Association of Road Transport Owners, Special Advisor to the Governor of Lagos State on Transportation, Shola Giwa, said the governor's decision was driven by recurring safety concerns on Lagos roads. He explained that the program aims to phase out aging high-risk trucks and replace them with cleaner, more reliable CNG-powered vehicles.
No lining, no brake, no anything. And they want to be good. They carry 40 feet. It's unfair now. I don't know. It's not good. It's expiring motor.
Mr. Governor, in his magnanimity, in his proactiveness, set up this meeting. So right now, there's an intervention that we are doing with the National Association of Road Transport of Nigeria to refleet their old and rickety vehicles. We've discussed with the banks already, and very soon we'll unveil this. It's about 150 billion intervention that will be done in phases. So the first phase will be about 50 billion first for the refleeting of the trucks that belong to NATO.
The presidential initiative on CNG under this government gave NATO 20 CNG buses. They also gave NATO 5 50-seater CNG buses. They just about 3 months ago gave us another 3 NNPC 50-seater CNG buses, all under this government, was able to improve the transportation of people across the country. And by this virtue, we have reduced the transportation cost by 30% because they are all CNG buses.
His Excellency Governor Dr. Babajide Olusola Sanwo-Olu, initiatives to ensure safety of life and property and government infrastructure in Lagos State. He has also approved a safety drug substance test training for all the truck drivers in Lagos State. Not only that, he has also approved for their drivers eye tests. Any one of them that are fine with eyes issue will be given the eyeglasses funded by the state government. It is in part is the days of accidents in Lagos State are over. The days of government infrastructure, damage to government infrastructures are over. The days of container falling on cars, Lagosians, Nigerians are over.
Today is a new time and transporters can smile, or when they finish the job for the day, they can go home and sleep happily.
All right, Bimbai. Yeah. Good morning.
Good morning
Femi Akinsoya, it's always nice to be on set with you. How are you this morning?
I'm okay.
Fantastic.
Thank you,
all right. Well, Bimbai, I'll start with you. I have a cocktail of stories.
Yes.
I mean, first, kudos to the Lagos State government. I mean, we've seen this sort of initiative with the CNG rollout. I mean, there are questions with whether or not we'll have enough stations to fuel, to gas these CNG trucks. But we're talking about high-risk powered vehicles at this moment. So I think the alternative for me will be CNG. So kudos to the Lagos State government. So we have a bunch of stories with Goodluck Jonathan, arriving from Guinea-Bissau. We took that story yesterday on what's trending with the concern, and it's good that, we also saw President Bola Ahmed Tinubu, lead the ECOWAS meeting, condemning the coup in Guinea-Bissau. And a lot of the other stories that we have unpacked, issues of state police, withdrawal of VIP.
You've given us a lot to work with this morning, Oji. You've given us a lot to work with. Where do we begin? Let's begin in Lagos State.
Yes.
When you think of high-risk trucks specifically, the image that comes to mind is usually when there are accidents, especially when they're carrying fuel, and then the fuel pours out and then people rush, and it usually causes fire and several casualties and deaths. So if we're able to transition to CNG, that's a step in the right direction. However, we're still looking at roadworthiness. And in the issue of roadworthiness, it's important for us to look at both the vehicle and the road itself. So, without starting the day on a negative note, I think it's important for us to commend steps in the right direction while continuing to advocate and appeal for all other elements in that ecosystem to also be addressed so that the trucks can be safe on the road. If the trucks are safe, if the truck drivers as well, as they said in that report, are going to be checked and breathalyzed and so forth, then that also means that generally everybody else on the roads will be in safer care. Now, very quickly to state police. Of course, this is a conversation that was spurred on by a directive from the president when he called an emergency on security just 2 days ago. And we see that the legislation has gotten straight into action with that. And a lot of commentary has resurfaced. Not many new talking points on that, because these debates have been going on for so long, which is that our policing system needs to be localized. The states themselves understand best the grievances, the challenges, the intricacies, and the nuances of internal state security. However, the biggest concern has always been, will this be used as a political tool by governors to terrorize opposition? Now, I see some commentaries have started referring back to the days pre-1960s in Nigeria when we had the Native Authority Police. Some people are saying, well, we had Native Authority Police and that worked. But I think it's also important not to be revisionist in our history, because when you look at the Native Authority Police, one of the major issues around it is that it was politicized. Although in that era, a lot of its power and authority came more from traditional rulers, but the butt of it is that this set a precedent for why many people are still traumatized and concerned about the emergence of state police, because the worry is, have our institutions evolved enough since pre-1960 to be able to contain the excesses of the leaders who want to abuse and misuse these issues? But however, the risk that we run at the moment seems to be higher, which is the safety, security, and livelihood of our people. Our security situation is at a very exacerbated stage. And the question is, well, is it a lesser evil? And should we deal with that, cross that bridge when we get to it? First, can we secure people? Can we secure our children, our schools, and so forth, before we worry about the excesses of politicians? It's a very tough balancing act. However, I think that for now, securing people is certainly more urgent than worrying about which governor will abuse it. Now, let's go very quickly to the release of the statement that revealed the team who will constitute the Nigerian section of the Joint Working Group as part of the agreement reached by the United States government and the Nigerian government to address our issues around insecurity. And the list didn't contain too many surprises. Of course, there continues to be debate about whether this group should be headed by the National Security Advisor. Now, what are the key issues there? The key issues are that the Office of the National Security Security Advisor coordinates. It has a mandate to coordinate, but it doesn't have a mandate to command any of the forces or any of the agencies. So the question is, okay, somebody who reports directly to the president, but only coordinates security forces, will that person have enough of an acumen, if I may call it that, to be able to sit in a meeting head to head with a Pete Hegseth from the Department of War, who is in a position to make decisions and make orders? So that's the contention. However, the introduction of the Ministry of Interior is a very fantastic development. Through all these conversations we've been saying, Minister Tunji Ojoye is missing, and he's an important part of this conversation because his ministry is responsible for non-military security here in Nigeria. And of course, border management. The narratives around these people are coming from outside the borders and are coming in to perpetrate crimes, and then they go back to various countries and so forth. Those narratives are persisting. I know there are other people who are saying that the threat is internal and that this is more of a local Nigerian problem. However, I think two things can be true at the same time. I think we can tackle issues around those who might be coming in through our porous borders, especially when we look at the proliferation of the weapons that are coming in, because we know those weapons are coming in from outside of Nigeria. Yes. So if the Ministry of Interior gets involved, we also have the Ministry of Humanitarian Affairs and Poverty Alleviation. That's a very big deal because we know that the humanitarian crisis is brewing. We're not focusing enough on that. How many people have left these communities that have been ransacked? Where are they? Who's caring for their needs? That's a part of the story that hasn't been told. So I think it's a very important development, and I'm glad to see those two portfolios were included on the committee.
Thank you. Good morning. Well, just following off of the points that Vimbai has just made, I think that at this point there's going to be a lot of pressure on Nuhu Ribadu as the leader of this joint working group to make sure that he does exactly what Vimbai said, essentially not only coordinate but be that proper axis between the group itself and the president. And then hopefully we can see tangible examples of action happening thereafter. You know, when he led the previous group to the United States, there was this issue that Nigeria's delegation was heavily stacked, and they were met by a group of US representatives that didn't really mirror the seniority of the Nigerian delegation, and it did come across as an insult. I remember Dr. Rubin, who we're looking forward to his return, him saying that he didn't feel as though that was respectful, that if anything it was a sign of disrespect, that you had senior members of Nigeria's federal government going over to the United States and they were not met with their counterparts. That should be the baseline when we're talking about security, when we're talking about anything between countries. There should be a mutual respect. So with this joint working group, now that we know who is going to be filling in the parts of the Nigerian side, we hope that on the other side of this conversation with the United States, they also have our counterparts so that we can really tackle this thing with a level of mutual respect and mutual understanding. So we're hoping that that is what will eventually materialize. But as I said, this is going to be another opportunity for Nuhu Ribadu to really show himself as the National Security Advisor in more than just words, but also in action. So we're looking forward to that. And we do welcome the news of the former President Goodluck Jonathan making it safely back to Nigeria. I know this is a president who has overseen many historic moments, and the irony is not lost on any of us that he went over to be an observer of democracy, and he's come back from that experience seeing democracy really disappear, unfortunately, in Guinea-Bissau. I know that many people were worried for his safety, even though in the immediate aftermath of the news coming out that he was trapped following the military coup and the interim president or interim military leader saying that land and air borders had been locked, and us knowing that our former president was inside the country, as well as I believe the former leader of Mozambique was also part of that delegation there was a lot of concern that these leaders be returned to their country safely. And in the time since the coup was announced to us knowing now that we have Goodluck Jonathan back in Nigeria safely, there was of course a lot of regional operation. You had the African Union, you had ECOWAS tabling meetings and making sure that they were able to not only foster the safe return of these different leaders, but also try and find out how we can find our ways back to democracy in Guinea-Bissau. Because unfortunately here we are yet again looking at another West African country falling victim to a military junta. As it stands now, we'll get into it in the World Brief because we do know that they have sworn in a new military leader, so he will be in power for at least the foreseeable future. But I do think that on its face, it is a negative thing for African democracy, and it doesn't show our continent well, because we are a continent that deserves people-led power. And unfortunately, more and more we're seeing examples, especially right in our region of West Africa, of that not happening. That being said, very happy that Goodluck Jonathan is back home.
We're all very happy to see his return. I mean, it was quite refreshing to know that it was literally less than 24 hours that, you know, he came back to Nigeria. He was one out of 36 delegates that went to West Africa to, you know, observe that, to Guinea-Bissau to observe that election, only to be trapped. And also, I just wanted to touch on the withdrawal of the 11,566 police from VIP. You know, I think that it's a brilliant move by the president. It means that the president is actually reading the room at the moment. But, you know, what are the core details of that withdrawal? We heard that, you know, Kayode Egbetoku saying that the police officers are going to be deployed to, you know, core community areas. What does that really entail? And, you know, just to put it into context, we are severely understaffed in Nigeria as regards to, you know, policing. And, you know, let's just analyze the UK alone. The United Kingdom, I believe that they have about 150,000 police officers to about 70 million Britons. And also in Nigeria, I believe Kayode Egbetoku said that they are about 370,000 police officers to, you know, man 230 million people. I mean, while this 11,566 police officers seem like, you know, a lot, but it's actually you know, a drop in the whole system. And so it's about, you know, really employing more police officers. We want to push for that. We want to push for more boots on ground because we're severely understaffed. And I like the fact that he also debunked that there was about 120,000 police officers. That story that was, you know, circulating on social media, you know, attached to VIPs. He says that that's a rumor and it's you know, it's not true. You know, just given the fact that it's, you know, we definitely have 370,000 police officers. Now, on the issue of the state police debate, this is what frustrates me the most. This is not the first time that we are hearing this debate in the House. I mean, isn't the Senate the legislative arm of government? I mean, can't they just sit down and draft a constitution, draft a bill, and have the state police? If this is what we need, this is what should happen. The debate just seems so political, and it feels like, you know, a slap in our face when we keep hearing that all state governors are adopting this bill. They want the state police, yet the Senate is saying that they are calling on the federal government. Is the Senate, a National Assembly, are they not the legislative arm of the federal government? So instead of all of these rhetoric about state police, whether or not we should have it, just go ahead, sign the legislation, and let this happen. You know, like in the United States, we have local police and we have, you know, all of these police. They coexist together.
Thank you for mentioning that.
Why can we not have that?
I think that I was literally came to this realization yesterday, because in the United Kingdom, it's not a fair comparison because the United Kingdom is so much smaller than Nigeria. But we do have police fragmented geographically. So for London, you've got the Metropolitan Police, you've got Sussex Police, you've got West Midlands Police. And the whole point is that you've got police targeted at these areas. They're experts in those areas, and it just makes more sense. So I do think at this point we are, as a country, ready for state policing. I take your points. They are valid in terms of the risk of abuse, of the politicization of police. We don't want state governors to be able to overrun and use them as an arm of intimidation. But I think at this point we've just gone past it. If we're talking about security,
we need to be alive first before they can abuse the powers.
Just to end on this note, they all have their own regional, you know, security architecture attached to their own, you know, states. We have the Amoteku, we have even in Zamfara, I saw that, you know, security architecture. We have it all across. So, I mean, they should absolutely implement this if this is what the House is calling on the federal government to do. I guess on that note, we'll wrap up the news headlines.